Hello, welcome at the IFA 2022. Today I want to talk to you about the most underrated sense that human beings have. Why is it so underrated? Smell is something that we never think of. It's something that's not in our consciousness, and I want to show you why it's so important to think about how to use scent in communications in general. Very briefly, my name is Robert Mueller-Gruenow, and I'm the founder and owner and managing director of Scentcommunication. We are a company that believes in scent as a very important tool for communications in general. This is between human beings, this is between brands and companies and human beings, and something that affects us every day, 24 hours a day in our lives. Very briefly, I want to explain how scents work in your human brain. The sense of smell is the only sense that's directly connected to your limbic system. It's as long as you smell, and actually as long as you breathe, you smell. Whenever you walk somewhere, this hall for example, you breathe, and we are surrounded by billions of scent molecules. A neutral scent doesn't exist. A neutral scent space doesn't exist either. So everything smells, every human being smells, every product smells, every surrounding smells. And as long as we breathe, we get scent molecules into our nose and create a direct emotional reaction in our limbic system. It's the only rational scent, the only sense that cannot be rationally filtered. That means as long as we breathe, we create emotions, we create associations, as you know, we trigger memories, and you cannot control it. It's always there. Just some examples. Probably every one of us knows that when we smell a scent that we haven't smelled for decades maybe the last time in our childhood when we were a little child, and then you, as a grown-up, you receive this smell, you smell it, and you are really put forward or backwards into your childhood, certain projecting back into your childhood. You remember things that were forever lost if you wouldn't be able to smell it at this certain moment. And the more emotional actually the situation was when you smelled something, the better you stored in your memory. And it's the case that smells you can remember better than any other sense of that you have. You can trigger your memories in a way that you have complete films in front of your inner eye that were forever lost if you hadn't had this smell at a certain moment. There's many possible ways to describe how important smells are. For example, in interaction between human beings. For example, if to find a partner, smell of a partner, of a human being, is significant, very significant for finding the right partner, because we communicate with our smell of your body. We communicate our complete information about our immune system. Meaning that if you have find a beautiful person that I may fall in love with, but the smell of this person is something that I don't like, which maybe happened to any one of us once in our lifetime. It's impossible to create a relationship, a long-term relationship with this person. This is because we get this information and it shows that we will not be able to create healthy children together. So there's a very broad field of reactions that are very important for our daily life. But of course, why is it so underrated? Why don't we think, when you communicate, why don't we think about smell? This is because we don't actually need it for our surviving. There's maybe very few exemptions. One of them you find here close to this, where I speak to, where you smell fire. And when you smell fire or you smell gas, it clearly shows us it's a dangerous situation, we have to run away or we have to go away. But in general, we don't need our sense of smell to, for example, find or determine whether food is good still or if it's rotten, because you go to a supermarket and you have a date on the food that shows us whether it's good or not. And one other aspect that shows that in our society smell is really underrated is that we do not even have words that explain or describe scents. We always try to describe scents from visual from a visual point of view. But if you look at certain certain societies in Middle America or in Asia, for example, natural people that live in the nature, they have a very broad way to describe scents, even more words to describe scents than to describe visual things. And why is that the case? Because they need to smell. They need to smell to survive. They need to smell danger behind the trees, or they need to define whether the food they bring home you can eat or whether it's dangerous for you to eat it. So this is an aspect that shows why scent in our society is really underrated. But of course, as long as you breathe, you smell. And as long as you smell have a very powerful impact on your behavior, on your decision making, on whether you like things, you like a space, you like a person, you like a product or not. Always. You never shut off your sense of smell. And how scents work, I mean, you get it into your nose, it's directly directed into your limbic system, part of the brain where you create emotions. And your memory is directly linked to the limbic system. And this is actually most likely the reason why you can store the memories of scents better than anything else. This is kind of the traditional way to how we smell, but there's now recent studies show much more impact of smells than we thought. Because as long as we smell, the molecules go into our nose, go into our lungs, and from there on they go into our blood. And now recent studies show that every organ human beings have, every organ, skin, heart, muscle, neurotransmitters in your brain, they all have certain receptors for smells. Why? Nobody knows yet. But studies in universities, especially here in Germany, at the University of Bochum, Professor Hans Hatt did this research, show that we can even change the heartbeat just by smelling orange molecules, for example. Or you can make your skin grow faster by a certain sandalwood molecule, it's artificial sandalwood molecule. You have a whole bunch of different smells that activate your neurotransmitters. Or vice versa, you have many scents that activate your GABA receptors in your brain that make you tired or make you fall asleep. So there's many aspects that are very interesting when you use scents, because you can activate people, you can calm people down, you can make them sleep better, and anything else. So you have associations that you trigger, you have memories that you trigger, you have emotions that you trigger, and there's a whole big field of things that you can trigger through scents, which hasn't really been researched on sufficiently at the moment. And we can, well, other way around. We have done a study with the Deutsche Bahn and the University of Munich. And this is the only long-term study of scents used in spaces, in trains, in the world. It's been done for several months, over a long period of time, over 2 years in total. And we did the following. We took a train, all the trains on one line in southern Germany, and we always put them in two parts. Half of the trains were scented, the other half of the trains was not scented. And then we'd ask many different questions, or the university asked many different questions, with several 100,000 pieces of data that they collected over the period of time. And we measured effects like on how nice was the journey, how clean was the train, how friendly was the personnel that worked in the train, but also how do you evaluate the cost-price ratio? Or how do you think, how long was the whole trip in total? Or how do you feel if the train was delayed, for example, or the previous train that you were supposed to take was cancelled, which happens once in a while in Germany. You had to wait and take another train. How do you measure the time that you had to wait? And how angry are you by not using the train that you were expected to use and being late? And all these questions were asked, always in the scented part as well as in the not scented part of the same train. And what they found out is, okay, this is a little bit, not the way I wanted it, but we had highly significant changes on people's behavior with punctualities or not punctualities, with trains that didn't run because of the weather, for example, but also highly significant impact on the evaluation of cost-price ratio. So just considering people sitting in a train that is scented, the part of the train that's scented, thought that the train ride was perfectly nice, with the price was perfectly okay, while on the other side of the train, people thought the train price was, or the price of the ride was very expensive. The same effects we measured with the service, how the service was evaluated, how the friendliness of the people that worked in the trains were evaluated, how clean the train was, how well maintained the train was. The scent, that was a relaxing, a calming scent, had a very high impact on all questions that were asked. We improved everything from cost-price ratio to the general mood of people up to the evaluation of the train ride in general. And how can you use scents for your brand? So how can you use it in communications in general? Of course, in trains it's very obvious, in hotels it's very obvious, but you can use also scent as a tool for communications as a brand that has nothing to do with scent. And I show you some applications that maybe broaden the view on how scent can be used. And this was several years ago here at the IFA in Berlin. Actually, the first company we created a brand scent for, which was Samsung. Samsung approached us in 2003, 2004, a long time ago, as a first probably global brand that realized that they needed to have a corporate scent. Because they understood that we always evaluate things through all our senses. We always breathe, we always touch, we always feel. And of course, we're visual people. The visual is still the most important. But scent is always there, also when you interact with the brand as Samsung. And so we created a scent which reflects the brand identity, the brand personality on a global scale, which is not so easy. Because what we associate as Europeans, for example, or mid-Europeans, what we associate with scents, may be totally different from Chinese, from Asians, from South Americans, from North Americans, or Northern European people. Because what we associate with scents is not genetically driven, but it's something we have learned during our life. And the experience we had with certain scents have an impact on how we associate scents today. And looking at a brand as Samsung and translating certain brand values, for example, you can estimate, for example, here we have a blue and white logo. Blue and white are the main colors of the brand. And to translate that into a scent is fairly easy and easy to explain. And this works globally because when we consider just thinking about blue and white, how would you translate that into a scent? You take water notes and you take airy notes. So considering the ocean, the smell that you have at the ocean, or maybe on a mountain with very clean air. So if you smell clean air, if you smell the ozonic scent that you have at the ocean, these scents always translate into blue and white. So it's something that works globally, whether in Australia or in Korea or in Germany, for example. At the same time, of course, they wanted to be kind of intimate. Intimacy is something that's not so easy to trigger because you maybe have something that smells like skin that makes you feel intimate. So we created a scent or part of a molecule that reflects the smell of the skin and put this into the scent. What else? Samsung wants to be innovative. But how do you translate innovation? What we did here at this time was we took 2 new molecules that were just recently created and nobody else has smelled before in their lives. Little background information, every year one of the few big suppliers of scent molecules create new scent molecules for the perfume industry typically. And what we have done is we have just had access to these new molecules, we smelled them, and we took 2 of them and put them into this complex Samsung brand scent, guaranteeing that if you smelled this, it is definitely something that you have never smelled in your life before. And with this tool, we tried to translate the innovational power that Samsung has into a scent. And then, of course, we integrated it in big spaces or in showrooms that they had, that brand stores all over the world. And maybe one interesting example on how you can even make people behave or change behavior, not only in trains, but also in stores, is the New York store in Manhattan, close to Central Park, in the Time Warner building. This is a very big store, and we were able to take 4 zones and send 4 zones independently from each other. And what they had very good trigger systems, and we could measure what happened if we put the scent in the further left side of the store or in the front right side of the store. And what you could see is that people that entered the store, and we had the scent in the further left side, moved to this area, stayed significantly longer in this area, and of course spent more time with the products displayed in this area, bought more, and then went out. And then we changed the scent to the part which is in the front right side, and the same thing happened with the front right side. People entered the store and spent the time significantly longer and significantly more people in this part which the scent was displayed. And then, of course, we ask people whether they like the scent and whether they don't, and measure how the effect is on brands. And one other nice example, one of my favorite examples actually, is the Deutsche Telekom, which of course has a very complex brand personality and brand identity definition. And in this case, we can show a little bit how we translate, similar to Samsung, how we translate certain aspects, certain brand personality aspects into scents, and how we also consider the surrounding, which is very important, the visual surrounding that the scent is experienced in. So, for example, one major task was to activate people. In order to activate people, we used molecules that have a proven direct link to our neurotransmitters. So when you smell it, the neurotransmitters are activated immediately. What we also did, for example, is it needed to be approachable. It needed to be very close to people. Actually, the Telecom wanted us to create a scent that determines the closeness of people, that activates people to communicate. The communication between people was a major aspect. And we took a molecule called iso-super, which is an artificial molecule which was developed in the 70s. It's not even new, and was used in many, many different perfumes, especially in men's perfumes. And it was supposed to be a cedar cedar wood molecule. It smells a little bit like cedar wood, but it's much more complex than that. It also smells like skin, very soft skin, very sexy and very attractive. And it smells very nice. It smells like a skin, like very attractive. But it also has an effect on our pheromone receptors, on one specific pheromone receptor. So when you smell it, one of the pheromone receptors is activated, which means that you feel attracted when you smell it. And then, of course, we took molecules which reflect the architecture of the store, because of course it needs to be authentic. And to be authentic means that we have to use materials that you see. And if you have, for example, a glass and steel environment, it doesn't make sense to use a woody scent, for example. But if you use wood and you have wooden floors, for example, it could really make sense to also work with different woolly scent molecules. So we have to also always consider the brand, how to translate that into certain molecules. We need to see how the visual surrounding is in which you experience the scent. And also we need to, of course, consider who's smelling, because as I said before, depending on your background, depending on your nationality, depending on how you grew up, scents could be very individual. And the associations that you have could be very different. And this we have to also consider when we create a smell. And then, of course, you can create many different products. This was on the IFA as well. I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we scented whole halls, but also we can scent small spaces, and that's of course very important. Scent is a tool for communications. This implies that you have to be able to control the scent. It doesn't make sense to spray a scent somewhere and then see what happens. But you need to be able to control a scent the same way as you control sound, the same way as you control light, the same way as you control visual design. It's a tool as any other tool that you use, but you need to be able to control it. And one very, of course, interesting task for us is to use the new technologies of virtual reality and augmented reality applications. Because here, of course, you need to be able to precisely synchronize the audiovisual contents that you experience with the sense that we activate. So some other examples that we've done, actually there's no type of business that I would allow not to use scents, because, as I said before, scents have always an effect on what we do, have always an effect on what we feel, on our decision making. And this doesn't matter whether you enter a car, you sit in the car, you enter a bank, you enter a doctor's office, or you go into a hotel, of course, which is very obvious, or into a store, into a branded store. Talking about augmented and virtual reality, we are currently developing a small system together with a company that's displayed here, A4VR, AV4R. It will be a small system that holds many different scents and then activates it according to what you experience in your virtual reality. Virtual reality, of course, without scent, there's something missing, obviously. And there's a study we've done together with the Technical University of Vienna, Professor Eidenberger, and he's doing studies on the perception of virtual and augmented realities with scent, with smell, and haptic elements. And he shows significant increase of the way how you perceive virtual reality if you add these two senses. And one of my favorite projects actually in the last few years was a project called Tree. And you can see that online on treeofficial.com, which gained many different awards globally. And what happened here is it was actually shown in Davos, and all the government leaders of almost all big countries in the world had to go through this experience, because it's all about nature and how we treat nature, because it's a small film that I want to show you, a small segment. And it starts somehow. Yeah, here we go. In the rainforest, and you are a tree. And what happens here is you are the little seed underneath the soil. And you look up and you see the light, and you grow. You start growing. What you smell now, you have to just imagine, is you smell the wet soil, this really wet human soil that you have in the rainforest, in tropical rainforests at this moment, and you grow and you go and you go through this soil, and suddenly you see the sunlight, and you see your surrounding. And what you smell now is the mixture between the soil and this really lush green notes from the rainforest. Yeah, you see the animals. These you don't smell. Ants, I don't know how ants smell. But this lush rainforest you smell. And you grow, and during this experience you can move your arms, and this has an effect on the tree, how the tree is moving. And you have animals that birds coming, flying, sitting down on your tree. And it stops. Okay, shouldn't have stopped, but maybe I just finish quickly. What happens then? You grow, and then you smell this really beautiful rainforest. But after a while, you smell some burning notes. And you grow, and you're one of the tallest trees in the surrounding, and in the far back you see the fire approaching, and then you smell the fire. And you watch, you cannot move, obviously, because you're a tree. So it's getting hot, and you smell the fire, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then suddenly, you start burning, and you smell the fire, the actual fire. And you cannot escape. And this is an experience that is so drastic that can never be as drastic if you just see a movie without the smell. It really hurts, makes you hurt. And this is, I think, very good example on how powerful smells are, especially in these new virtual reality environments or augmented reality environments. And that's a very, very important tool that should not be missed when you consider creating such experiences. And I invite you to go over here and do an experience that you can have with only one smell, but I think it's very powerful and shows you how big the impact of smells are. Thank you very much.